Hey friends, what's up? I thought it would be really fun to look at the unreleased Svelte 5 runes to make this simple to-do app. If you're not familiar with runes, you can watch one of my other videos which goes in depth for explaining runes, but in this case we're just going to make this simple but awesome to-do app. So as always you can like, subscribe, and you can become a member on Patreon. And now when you've done all of these things, we can filter them by the active one, by the completed. And yeah, we also have local storage, so we're going to see how that works in Svelte 5, so it's going to persist if I refresh the page. And how beautiful is this, friends? If you want to play around with this example or follow along, I'm going to include a link to the Svelte Lab REPL in the description, so you can try it out yourself. So you can go to this template in Svelte Lab, which should create this integrated development environment in your browser, so you don't have to set up a local development environment, which is really awesome, so you can play around with that. But yeah, let's get started. Alright friends, so I'm starting from scratch. The only thing you have to do is install the latest version of Svelte, so you can do that by going to a terminal, and then you can say npm I svelte add next. So this is going to install the latest version of Svelte. But yeah, I can just show you. If I go to package.json, you can see here at Svelte you have the latest version of Svelte. So let's close that, and then let's just open page Svelte, and let's just make a h1 tag so you can start our development server again. If we go here, say npm run dev, and this should start the development server. As you can see, there's already a bunch of warnings, so some things don't work yet with Svelte 5, so don't be surprised, because right, it's in development. So if we can go here, we can see it outputs high. Alright friends, so let's get started. I'm going to remove this, and I'm going to use this snippet to create a script tag. So you might be used to defining to-dos like this, but in Svelte 5 we have runes or signals, so we can say $, which is available to you. You don't have to import this from anywhere. And then you can just say state and pass it the empty array. And this is a lot clearer to other people reading your code, because now they don't have to second guess if this is a regular JavaScript variable or a reactive statement, right? And now we can also create some dummy data. So I'm going to have text. This is going to be to do 1. And then I'm going to have done, which is going to be false. So let's just copy this one more time, just so we have some dummy data for starters. Alright, so now we can create these to-dos. And let's just loop over our to-dos, to-do, and then let's create a to-do. So now first I'm going to create an input which is going to be of type of text. So this is going to be our to-do, and I'm going to remove this. I'm going to set the value to be to-do text. So let's copy this over. So this is going to be a checkbox. This is going to be to-do done. Of course, you can destructure this from here. So you can say text done, but I actually prefer things to be explicit, so I'm going to leave it like this. And then we can also use the index, and if you want you can pass the key, but I'm not going to in this case. Alright, so let's save this and let's see what we have here. Alright, so things already look great, and this is because I'm already using open props. So if you want to set this up, you can look at the layout, right, but you don't need styles. But speaking of styles, let's add some styles over here. So I can go to style, create this style tag. Now I can say to-dos, so CSS grid is absolutely beautiful. We can just say display grid, and then we can say gap 1 rem. So let's just say margin block start, so we can use this logical property. We can say 1 rem, and now already things are going to start looking better. So now for our singular to-do, we can say position relative, because I want this checkbox to be position relative. My bad, I want this to be absolute, so this is going to be relative. I just want to put this inside of here so it looks nicer. So I'm going to say relative, and that's basically it. Let's also style the inputs. So I can say input type text, and I can give it a max width and some padding. So let's create input type checkbox, so you can add these styles. So I'm going to say position absolute. So right, I'm going to say 4%. So let me just save this and let's see what's going on. So you can see it already looks okay. But now let's use the trick to center it. This is what I often reach to even today. So we can probably say top 50%. But that's really a problem, because it's really not, it's 50% plus this element, right? That's why it isn't centered. So we can use this old trick, which is even handy today. So we just have to translate the y 50%. So if we translate its y, it's going to translate 50% of this element, right? So if we subtract that, it's going to be centered. Let me just really show you how this works. We can even use this shorthand property. So we can say translate, so we don't have to use transform anymore. And then this is going to be the X and this is going to be the Y. So we're going to leave the X alone. And for the Y, we're going to say, hey, do minus 50%. Okay, so now that we saved it, how beautiful is this? Now you can see it's centered. And let me just see here. Okay, so instead of value for checkbox, this has to be checked. Yeah, so this can be checked, do done. All right, so that's basically it. All right, so let's work on adding a to-do. So how can we do that? Well, we can do form, etc. in here, and then we can use input, but I'm actually not going to focus on this part. Let's just ignore the server, all the other things. Let's just use client-side JavaScript to make this to-do app today, right? So I'm just going to do the simplest thing possible. I'm going to say input, which is going to be, again, of type text. And then it's going to have a placeholder, which is going to be add to-do. So if I save this, we can see add to-do. And now we're just going to use on key down. So you don't have to longer use this syntax in Svelte on key down, even if you can, right? It still works, but we're going to use just on key down. So now event listeners in Svelte 5 are just regular attributes. But of course, the downside of this, for example, if you have on submit, then your modifiers won't work like prevent default. So of course you can still use things like this if you have a form or etc. But I'm just going to use here on key down. That's going to be it. And I'm going to create a function add to do. So let's go up here and then we're going to create a function add to do, which is going to accept an event. And TypeScript is of course optional. You don't have to use TypeScript, but this is going to be of type keyboard event. So now I just want to ignore everything that's not the enter key. So you can actually log this out. You can say event key, since you have now great type completion. So if I go here and open the developer tools, I can start typing whatever. And now I can press enter so we can see what key has been pressed, escape, and etc. So we can check this right now. So we can say if event key isn't enter, then we're just going to return. So now if I save this, and you're going to see nothing is going to happen unless I press enter. All right, so we just need to create the element, or I can say to do element is event target. So TypeScript is going to apply right now because it has no idea what this is. So you can say as HTML input element. So now when you hover over this, we're going to see you're going to get great auto completion. And then if you want an ID and if you're doing like a fun project like this, the easiest way to create an ID is going to be by saying window. So you can use the crypto from window and then you can say random UUID. So this beats creating a date or whatever else you want. But in this case, I don't think we're even going to use an ID. So I'm not going to use this, but just a useful thing to know. And then we need to create this text. So we can say to do element value. And now we can say const none false by default. All right. So now let's update our to do. So how can we do that? Well, we still use reassignment in Svelte 5. So we can create this array again. We can spread our to-dos like butter, and then we can just pass the new to-do. So this can be text done. All right, cool. So let's save this and see if we add a to-do. So you can see it works right now. But how do we clear this, right? And basically, we can just go here and we can say to do element value, and we can set it to be blank. All right, so now if we go here, we can type test, is going to be added, and this is going to be cleared. All right, so that's how simple it is to add a to-do. All right, so next I want to add the ability to edit a to-do. So we can go to our code here, and then we can just add an event listener. So we can listen here on input, and then we can edit the to-do. And you can see in this case, if we want to edit the to-do, if we want to pass in something to this function, we would have to do something like this. And then let's think, what do we need for editing the to-do? We need to know what to do we want to edit. So we can probably pass it something like index, and then we need to pass it the new value, right? So how do we do this? Well, we can pass in the event, and then we can say here event target value. And this is going to be really similar for checking the to-do, but there is something that doesn't sit right with me doing this approach, right? So what I prefer to do, I'm just going to say edit to do, and then I want to get all of my data from the event itself. So how do we do that? Well, we can use data attributes. And now here I can just say data, give it any name I want, ID, I'm going to name it index, and I'm just going to pass it here. And this is going to be maybe 2 lines of code extra, but something in me likes this a lot more. But of course you can do you. So now we can go here and we can create a new function. We can create function edit to do, And in this case, again, we're going to pass an event, and this is just going to be typed as event. Alright, so now again, we're going to say input element. So event target, and we're going to say as HTML input element to a piece TypeScript and get great auto-completion. Alright, so just like I said a minute ago, I just love to plug things from the event. So we can say const index. So how do we get the index? Well, it's really simple. We can just say input element, so that's going to be the element itself. And then to get the data attribute, we can say dataset, and then we can just get the index. And now if I console log this out, we're going to see that this is the case. So now if you go here and we can see the index is 0, and here that the index is 1. Alright, cool. So how do we update our to-dos? And again, it's the same. We use reassignment. So we have the index now, so we can say to-dos at index. So what to-do do we want to update, right? Then we can say text. And how do we get the value? Well, again, we just refer to the element, input element dot value. Awesome. And we get here complaining from TypeScript because this is a string, right? And it expects a number for the index. So we can just turn this into a number by saying plus. But now TypeScript is complaining, saying, oh, this doesn't exist. What are you doing? This might not exist, right? And you can just say, listen, TypeScript, shut up. And you can just use the bang. You're like, okay, listen, I know better than you, okay? So now we can save this. And now we can go here and we can update our to-dos. Say banana or whatever else you want. So now we can update our to-do successfully. And let me just actually show you that this is true. So we haven't talked about effects yet because I'm saving this for later, but let me just really show you. You might be used to something like doing this. Console log, to-dos, right? And this would output each time to-dos update, but we really don't have this label syntax anymore in Svelte 5. So we can use an effect. An effect is going to rerun everything inside, which is a signal, so it knows that to-do is updated and is going to rerun this function. So we can say to-dos, and let me just save this. So now when I add test, it's going to log out again, right? We have these beautiful to-dos here. So when I go and update this, it should also log, right? How beautiful is this, right? And that's basically it for editing the to-do. Alright, so let's work on toggling the to-do as completed, and we're going to see it's almost the same. So here we can go to this code, and this really isn't anything related to Svelte 5, right? This is just maybe how we would have done it also in Svelte 4. So now instead of on input, we have to check for on change. And this is a checked event, right? And then we can just say toggle to do. And again, I don't want to do this where I pass things in. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to say data index I. And this is not on change, but on change. And that's it. So now all of this is the same. And you're going to see even this function is very similar. So here we have edit to do. I'm going to say function toggle to do. We're going to pass an event. This is going to be the same. So I'm going to copy over this line and this line because again, it's the same. We just want the index so we know what to do to toggle. And then we can use reassignment again. So we can say to-dos at index done. So we're going to flip it. So we're going to say opposite of the same thing. To-dos index done. And that's going to be it. So let me just clear everything, right? So let me just test this. And it should log out because we changed it, right? So we can see the first one is true and the second to do is false. And that's how simple that was. Alright friends, so let's work on filtering the to-dos. So how can we do that? Well, basically we need some new piece of state. So here we have to-dos, but it would be great if we had some method to update a filter, and then based on that we can filter the to-dos. And we can do this using enumerated state. And what do I mean by that? Well, basically we can just create let filter, so we can create a rune out of that. And now we can pass here a couple of things. We can pass in all, completed, or active, right? And if you're curious, you can watch my other video on using enumerated state instead of booleans, which is really awesome. So if you want to check that out, go ahead. But I'm going to also change another thing. I'm going to remove this, and then let's just create some types. And if you're not using TypeScript, this is purely optional. So let's first create to do here, and then we can say text string, and done is going to be boolean. And I'm also going to create a type for the filters. So we're going to say filters, and let's just make a union here. I'm just going to say all active, And the last one is completed. So how can we use types for a rune? So we can just use a generic here, and then we can say to do, but it's an array of to-dos, right? So we can say, hey, this is an array. And we can just say here, filters. And that's basically it. So now we have great auto-completion. All right, so let's create the filters in our markup. So we can go here below our to-dos. So now I'm just going to say filters. And then first I'm going to create a button. So the first one is going to be all. And now I'm going to use on click. So we can do this. We can pass a callback and we can say filter, and then we can reassign it. But let's actually create a function because it just looks nicer. You don't have to, but in my opinion, it's nicer. And it's really one line of code anyhow. So we can say set filter, and then we can accept the new filter. It's going to be of type filters, and we can just say filter equals new filter. That's basically it. So the same thing you would do in one line. So we can say set filter. We have great auto completion, so now we can say all, and let's just copy this over 2 times. So now we can say active and complete it. That's it. And also, if you want to be a hotshot, you can do something like this. You can say each, and now you can say all active. Ignore my typing. So you can say something like this as filter, and then you can just use one button here, and then you can set filter to the current filter, and you can do this, but that's really up to you. So now this is a lot shorter, but yeah. Alright, cool. So now if you look at here, we have our filters. So now let's also log the filters out. If we go here to our effect, and now we can say console log filter. So let's see. So as you can see, all is the default. We can say active, completed, and we can go back to all. Alright, but how do we filter the to-dos, right? Well, we can use derived state. So we can use the existing to-dos and we can get another state from them. So that's basically what derived state means. So how do you do that? Well, there is a derived rune state. So previously your derived state would be using like a colon, right? But now you actually have a rune that's named derived. So we can go here and we can say let filter to-dos, and now we can say derived, and we can actually just pass a function here. So the Svelte compiler is going to see that we are using the signal to-dos inside, and it's going to rerun this each time to-dos updates, right? But instead of doing this, I just want to create a nicer function. So I can say filter to-dos, and I'm just going to invoke it, and that's going to work perfectly. And if you want to be pedantic, you can pass to-dos here. I usually like to be explicit in these scenarios, but in this case, everything is in one file and it's related to to-do, so whatever. You don't have to really pass anything. And I really want to show you that Svelte compiler can track these dependencies regardless. So we can go here below set filter, and we can just create a function. Filter to-dos. We don't have to pass anything if we don't want. And I just want to stress how more powerful this is in Svelte 5, because this works as expected, right? In Svelte 4, you would have to do something more unusual here so the Svelte compiler can see these dependencies. But right now, this is really not a problem. We're just saying, okay, to-dos is inside of this. Svelte is going to see it and is going to rerun it, no problem, without weird side effects and etc. So let me just really show you how beautiful is this. So we can go to filter to-dos here, and now we can do whatever you want. And in my case, I'm just going to use a switch statement. And we're going to switch on the filter when we change it. So we're going to have a case for all. And let me just remove all of this. We're going to have a case for all. We're going to have an active case, and we're going to have a completed case. Alright, so now if it's all, we can just return the to-dos. Nothing special, right? And maybe you want to pass to-dos here and do something else, right? This is really a perfect use case, right? But whatever. And then we can go here. We don't have to use break because we're returning. So we can just, for the active, say to-dos, filter. We get the to-do, and we're going to say, hey, if it's not done. And we can copy over the same thing for completed. And we can just say the opposite. If it's done, then it's completed. And how awesome is this? You didn't even have to think about it, just because to-dos is a rune or a signal. This is just going to rerun and work as expected, right? So now instead of saying to-dos in our template, let me just see, we can just say filter to-dos. If I save everything and let's just refresh for good measure. So I can just say 1, 2, 3, 4, and let's just complete some of them. So this is going to update our to-dos, and then let's see the active to-dos. Oh, how beautiful is this, friends? So it's 1 and 4, and then we can see the completed and everything works as expected. So let's just add some more extra styles here. So below to do, we're going to use a completed class. I'm going to say opacity 0.4, and here I'm going to say transition. This is going to be on the 2-element transition, so we want to transition opacity 0.3 seconds, and easy is the default, so I'm not going to touch that. And let's also give styles for filters. So we can say filters, and we can say margin block 1 rem. Alright, so if I save this, now we should see we have some spacing here. So everything looks beautiful. And let's see if we uncheck, and we should add this style here, or class, my bad. So we can use Svelte's class directive. So here where we have this to do, we can say class completed. It depends on what? If the to do is done. Now we can add this, and let's see if we mark this as completed. So now you should see how beautiful is this, friends. Alright, friends, so the last thing I want to add is to be able to see how many remaining to-dos there are. So we can do this really simply by adding the last function here. We can say function remaining, you can name it whatever you want, and then we can just return to-dos. We're going to filter them by the to-dos that aren't done, so we can see if the to-do is not done, and then we just want the length, nothing else. So this is going to rerun again each time to-dos updates, and now we can just invoke it here in our markup. So we can go here, and I'm going to create a p tag, and I'm just going to say remaining, invoke the function remaining. All right, so now let's see if this works. So we can add one to do, we can see it updating. All right, cool. So now if we mark this as completed, 3 remaining, 2 remaining. So this works as expected, and we can see all of our previous code also works. Alright, friends, so the last thing I want to add is to persist these to-dos to local storage, so we can see how effect works, how it replaces the previous way how we done things. So of course, as always, you can go here to application, and then you can look at local storage here, but I'm just going to chill out in this console tab, and I can just say window local storage, so we can peep into this right here, so you can see what's going on, or you can just say local storage. You don't have to use window, right? And that's basically it. So now let's add this, and this is really simple. So if we go to the top here, I'm just going to remove this effect, and of course I'm going to type it out just for practice, right? And the first thing we want to do, we want to check if the to-dos are in the local storage or if we have saved to-dos, and then we want to load them instead. So really nothing special here. We can say const save to-dos, and we can check local storage, get item, and then we can check for to-dos. So right now there shouldn't be any, right? So if we log save to-dos, this should log out null. That's it. All right, in the case if they do exist, so save to-dos, you can say if save to-dos, and then you can say the to-dos are equal JSON parse. We need to parse them because they're a string, so we're going to turn them back into an object, and then we're going to say save to-dos. Or you can make this shorter, say save to-dos, and say to-dos equals JSON parse save to-dos, but this isn't valid JavaScript, right? So we need to surround this with the round boys, and this is going to be valid. So now we can remove this, and this is it. So this effect is going to run once when the component mounts. So this replaces on mount. And now let me just show you something. So we can set or update the local storage each time we update to-dos. So again, this is an effect, so it tracks this rune. It says, okay, it can see to-dos inside of this and it can update it. So we just have to say local storage set item. We need to give it the keys, and now we need to turn the to-dos into a string because we really can't store an array in local storage. So you can say JSON stringify, and we can pass it to-dos. So now Svelte sees Todos and is going to read on this. But this is really going to be a problem because we can just read on this and we're going to see we should even get an error, I think. Let's just see. Okay, maximum update def exceeded. So basically you ran this into an infinite loop because it updated, then it is this part, then it updated, right? But instead of doing this, let's just move this one line and we can have multiple effects, right? So we can leave this effect alone. We're just saying, okay, run this when the component mounts just once. I don't care about this anymore. There isn't any dependencies in here, right? It's just save Todos, which is a variable we created. But we can create another effect. We can say effect. We can pass a callback. And now this is great. So now we can just do this and everything should work as expected. So if I refresh, and let me just look at local storage, what we have here. So you can see here we have an empty array. And if you want to clear local storage, if you're testing this out, instead of going through struggles in the app tab or whatever, you can just go here, just say clear, boom, bam, easy like this. So we can say 1, 2, 3, 4. So now let's see if this persists. So if we, okay, so we refresh the page and we can see our to-dos work as expected. But let's see if this also works. So now this should work. And let's just check local storage, what we have here. So now we can see this is a string, right? So this is where you have to stringify it. So we can see it looks like it updated, right? So let's refresh everything. Ah, how beautiful is this, friends? And you can see this really isn't that much different than Svelte 4, but it works a lot more predictably and your code is much easier to reason about. But basically that's it. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and you can also support me by becoming a patron. Thank you for watching and catch you in the next one. Peace!